Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
In 1976, the Antique Snowmobile Club of America was formed over in Wisconsin. And it was an organization of a group of people that wanted to bring these old sleds back to life again. There are a lot of them still sitting in the tree rows, people's garages, people's sheds and whatever, and it's nice to kind of recycle them and bring them back to life again. The Antique Snowmobile Club is very helpful with restoration tips, getting you in contact with people that have knowledge on specific machines. And they're just good people. They're just a lot of fun. There are events almost every weekend, all the way through the snow belt, anywhere you want to go. And any given weekend in the wintertime, there's some sort of an event, a trail ride, grass drags usually in the fall. Swap meets are going on almost continuously, looking for that one part that you may need to get your restoration completed. When I first started getting into this, most of the people would just tell you to come pick them up and get them out of the yards. With the popularity of it now, with eBay, with the different organizations, the different clubs, with the Vintage Snowmobile magazine, with the Antique Snowmobile Club of America, there's a lot of smaller groups that have started up. This has become very, very popular, and of course there's more of a demand for them again. And they don't make them like this anymore. It's just like land, they don't make anymore. So you get an old machine like this, it's pretty unique. There's a lot of jockeys out there that are into buying and selling for the bucks, but that's not what I'm into it for. I do it because I enjoy it. I enjoy the people that are involved in the hobby too. I've met a lot of nice people over the years. In the collecting of snowmobiles, you have your antique snowmobiles and you have your vintage snowmobiles. A vintage snowmobile is any old snowmobile. They all fit under that category. In that category, the antique snowmobiles are 1968 and older. All the machines up to about 64, 65 were more of a workhorse. They weren't the sporty machine that you had to ride around, more for fun. They were more of a work machines. Skidoo was the one that first came out with a machine that actually was a fun little machine to ride. And that was back in about 1959, and it took a few more years before the other companies followed suit. Polaris came out with the Comet, which was more of a sport machine. Arctic Cat came out with the 100. Many of the early machines all ran a four-stroke, four-cycle engines on them. You see, like on this Trailmaker. This type of a motor was commonly used in garden tractors, industrial motors that way. Everybody wanted to go with something a little faster and a little lighter, so what happened over the years, people started going to more of the two-cycle engine, where you had to mix the gas and oil together. I got into the antique snowmobiles maybe about 15, 20 years ago. I was going down a highway, and I was just outside of Bemidji, and I stopped at a garage sale, and I saw this Trailmaker sitting here, and I ended up pulling in. I go, what in the world is this thing? And what ended up happening is I picked it up for like 50 bucks, I hauled it home, and I had so much fun putting it back together. Just the challenge of getting it back and actually operating across the snow. I was driving it out ice fishing on the lake one day, and all of a sudden I had somebody come by and he says, hey, you should belong to the Antique Snowmobile Club. And I said, there is such a thing, huh? And anyway, they were based out of Iowa at the time. And I got involved with that, and I got a lot of good helpful hints for restoring them, fixing them all up, and I really started having a lot of fun with them. Everybody has something different that they like to do when it comes to the antique sleds. Everybody has different angles. Some people like to restore the race sleds. Some people like to restore the sled that Grandma and Grandpa had back on the farm, or when they came up to the lake cabin. I've always kind of had more of a Minnesota made thing. A couple of the different things about some of the sleds that we have here today is the fact that, for example, this is a 1969 Scorpion. The Scorpion was built by the Harrison family. This was after about 10 years of building snowmobiles when it was the family-owned business. Scorpion, of course, is over in Crosby, Minnesota. This was kind of their machine that they put together before they sold out to a corporate company. So it was all Minnesota, pretty much Minnesota made. I try to bring a little bit of history into each of my snowmobiles. I have a Motoski and a Skidoo. They're both made, of course, in Canada. But if you look at these machines, for example, a machine like this one here, instead of it just being a Motoski, I wanted it to have a little story behind it too. So one of the things that we did with this model here, This is a 71 Capri. This model, when I picked this one up, it had the cover and everything with it. It's all original. Back in 71, 72, 73, a gentleman by the name of Bill Cooper, Wild Bill they called him, did an expedition around the Arctic Circle. He never finished it, but over 3 years they were riding machines like this, and they wanted to go all the way around the polar ice cap with a machine similar to it. So besides it just being a snowmobile, there's a little bit of a story that goes with it, because people always walk up and go, they've never heard of the Trans-World Snowmobile Expedition. Well, it's just another Minnesota story that goes, from the Willow River area. Probably the most famous, as far as the exploration goes, is the Plaisted Expedition. And this is called the Little Lady. The Little Lady is actually the nickname for the sled that Walt Peterson from St. Cloud, Minnesota drove. He was the chaplain and mechanic. He had to keep these things running. 40-some days on the polar ice pack. They made it to the North Pole. They tried it first in 1967, did not make it, came back, did it again in 1968, and they did make it. So the story of that, when I take these sleds to snowmobile shows and everything, there's a story that goes with the sled. And it's an event that's, like I said, I love Minnesota history, and that's a pretty important part of it that, we don't want to forget about. Edgar Hattine founded the Polaris Company in 1954, then sold it in 1960 to his brother Alan and his brother-in-law David Johnson. From that point, the Polaris Company was in their hands. Edgar moved to Thief River Falls and started the Arctic Cat Company. First year in 1962, it was called Polar Enterprises. Polar Enterprises, Polaris Industries, the name sounded very close to the same. So after 1 year, he changed the name in 1963 from Polar to Arctic. Edgar is always coming up with new, innovative ideas. This was his Excite-mobile. This was something that he had in his garage. He would build things like this, take it down up to the factory, and say, here's an idea. And some of the ideas they use, some of the ideas, if you look at something like this, the motorcycle technology, this is a 250 Suzuki motorcycle engine. It has an independent ride in the back. It has an independent ride on the seat. It's very unique. You just don't see something like this every day, but a lot of these ideas, the motor being down low is very similar to what the Skidoo Rev uses nowadays. The motorcycle technology that Yamaha uses, the independent ride on the seat. You see a lot of these things, this is where your ideas come from. This is how you evolve in the snowmobile business. There were 191 snowmobile companies that got started throughout the years. I mean, this thing just started booming in the 60s. Like I said, a lot of the companies, Massey Ferguson made snowmobiles for a few years, tractor companies. John Deere was big into it for many years. Actually, John Deere got into the cross-country racing for quite a few years. Actually was based out of Breezy Point, Minnesota. They had their team, they stayed at the Fawcett House, they got up in the morning, they had breakfast, they had a workout. They went out and they had to ride 150 miles a day, come back in, tear the machines down, sit down, have board meetings and go through stuff, go back, work on the machines again, ride them some more. Pretty tough regiment that they had to go through each day in the fall and early winter up until the cross-country racing season started. We usually get together, once a week or so, and some people have knitting parties and whatever, and we kind of like to get together and work on these old sleds. Just half the fun of it is just taking it out for that first ride and get them going. And they can be frustrating at times and kind of hard on the religion too a little bit. But before I restore any machines, we usually go through mechanically and get them going. Get everything working, make sure everything is right. And then I go back, I might run them a year or two, and then when I get time, I'll go back and repaint them again.
I've been riding snowmobiles since I was a kid. My dad bought the first Arctic Cat Panther in 1976 and just grew up with it over the years. I joined the Pequot Brush Pilots here about 3 years ago, and just through the association with Dave and some of the other club members got into this whole antique thing. And they're simple to work on. You don't need a lot of tools or knowledge. You don't have like the new machines got all the computerized fuel injection and whatnot, and you got batteries and computers, and these don't have none of that. If you got gas and spark, they should run. I've been involved in it for about 3 years now, and it's kind of an addicting thing. Once you get involved in it, you're involved. And to me, one of the neat things about it is when we have our rendezvous in a week or so here, when you see 100 plus of these old machines going down the trail at the same time, it's just a neat experience.
Sure, this is, what is this, the 17th annual?
Yeah, 17th annual Pequot Lakes Trail Ride. It always takes place on a Friday. We leave 1 o'clock sharp. And what is it, about 8 mile round trip maybe?
About 8 mile round trip.
Yeah.
We ride to the local supper club, and the local snowmobile clubs sponsor a free feed for us for lunch.
Yep, at the Timberjack.
At the Timberjack. And then from there we'll ride back into Pequot Lakes here. And we have a bonfire about a mile north of town at the Rasmussen Ranch. That's part of the fun for Friday. And then tomorrow we have races with these old sleds. The old reverse over for the sleds that have reverse rear engine machines. And we have slalom race, obstacle course. We have a drag race and a Le Mans style oval. So everybody, no matter what kind of sled you got, it all gets pumped into the computer and it comes out with a formula, so everyone's competitive with everyone else.
Yeah. And it generates a lot of people. I think last year we had over 100 sleds on the trail ride alone.
Yes. And we're fighting the weather this year because it's chilly.
Yeah, chilly.
We'll still have probably, I imagine, 50, 60
It's a good
sleds
time.
today.
It's one of the Canton shows. It's fun.
And this is probably the biggest antique snowmobile rendezvous and race in the United States. This is strictly for older sleds, 68 and down. Although newer sleds are welcome to ride and show also, but for competition you have to be 68 or older. But we've got everything from early 60s. In fact, I think we might even have a 59.
We have a 1960, I believe, is that Snow Traveler over there.
Okay, and rear engine Polaris Snow Travelers made right here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Rear engine Arctic Cats, early 60s stuff, made right here in Minnesota. A lot of Minnesota sleds.
Yeah.
We've got a Larson Falcon that was made here by Larson Boats. They were combined with Polaris, made in Minnesota again. We've got Skidoos, Arctic Cats, Suzuki's. Quite a variety. Probably, I imagine there'll be 30 different manufacturers that will be attending here today. It's kind of like going back to the old days of snowmobiling because we're riding the sleds of the period. And a lot of us are wearing clothes, that similar period clothes, and it's just kind of a blast from the past. You're going back 40, 50 years, and we're reliving the way it used to be.
Yep.
The community has been very, very generous about helping us out with this show. Our trophies are paid for. People have to spend enough money in gas and hotel accommodations when they come into town. We don't want to make it any more expensive than it has to be. And it's just basically to get together and just have a good time. You can go to our website, www.ascoa.org. There's just a lot of different people out there throughout the United States, Canada. We have members over in Europe, now Russia, that are also into restoring these old machines. They're just fun. The people are fun, the events are fun. We still ride our new snowmobiles too. It's good to get on one of these for a while, and then when you get on your new machine, you appreciate it a lot more. They're just, but they're unique, and it's a part of the history of Minnesota that with the machines that we have in our collection here, it's all pretty much a Minnesota type of a connection. The Antique Club is a big part of that. That's how I got started with this club, and I've met a lot of good people through the years, and as my good friend Mr. Hattin would say, people are all good, but snowmobile people are great.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org. If you have segment ideas pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund by the vote of the people on November 4th, 2008.